My parents took my college fund to buy my sister a wedding, so I cut contact completely. Years later, they begged me to save them from debt. I'm a 23-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, my family seemed perfect. We had the kind of home you read about in books, everyone always smiling, dinner on the table every night, and my parents working tirelessly to provide for us. Growing up, I always heard how much my parents sacrificed for us, how they'd put their own dreams on hold just to make sure we were okay. They made it sound like they were heroes for giving everything they had, and for a long time, I believed them. But looking back, I realize I should have seen the cracks much sooner. They always told me how lucky I was to have them. "We've done everything for you, son," Dad would say, pulling me into his big, worn-out arms after a long day. Mom would say the same thing, that all they ever wanted was for me to be happy. And don't get me wrong, I loved them for it. I thought we were a family like any other, doing the best we could with what we had. But something shifted when Emma, my younger sister, that's when I first noticed the difference. Up until then, we were both treated equally, or so I thought. But somehow, Emma started getting everything. The nicer clothes, the better birthday parties, the special treatment. When I asked for something, it always felt like I was asking for too much. I'd get the "we can't afford that right now" line while Emma was out shopping for new things every week. My parents never said it outright, but the way they talked about her, it was like she was the child they always wanted, and I was just ... the one who was supposed to make them proud without needing much. It wasn't just the gifts, it was the way people looked at her, how they talked about her. Emma was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. It was subtle at first. Compliments from family members always seemed to be aimed at her. "Look how beautiful Emma looks in that dress, just like her mother. She's so bright. Emma always knows how to make everyone laugh." And I got the "he's a good boy, does his homework" kind of attention, if I was lucky. I thought maybe it was just me overthinking things, but something about it felt off, like I was invisible while Emma stood in the spotlight. I had to swallow it, because what else could I do? They were my parents. But that feeling never quite went away, and I started to feel more and more like the second choice. And then came the day I would never forget. The moment when I realized just how deep this divide really ran. That day, everything changed. I always thought I had a good head on my shoulders. Growing up, I was the one who focused on my future. I'd stay up late studying, making sure every grade was perfect, because I wanted to make my parents proud. I knew they worked hard for everything we had, and I wanted to show them that all their sacrifices were worth it. My goal was simple. I wanted to go to college, get a good degree, and build a life that was better than the one they had. It wasn't about luxury, it was about proving that I could stand on my own 2 feet, and maybe, one day, I could take care of them the way they had taken care of me. So when I was in high school, I worked part-time jobs, saved every penny I could, and applied for scholarships. I knew I'd need financial help, but I was determined. I was going to do this, and my parents, they promised they'd help too. They told me that they would contribute to my college fund, even if it meant sacrificing some things along the way. I believed them. They had always told me how they'd do anything for me. And this was the moment I thought I'd finally be able to take that next step. The day I found out I was accepted to my top choice was one of the happiest of my life. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. I remember the pride in their eyes as they hugged me, telling me they were so proud of the person I was becoming. For a moment, everything felt perfect. I knew it would be hard, finances were tight, but I thought with their help, I'd make it work. They had always given me the impression that my future mattered to them, just as much as it did to me. But then came the wedding talk. It wasn't even something I saw coming. Emma was only 18, and she announced that she was getting married. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was young, and it didn't seem real. But then the wedding plans started taking shape. My parents told me they needed to save up for the wedding. I didn't think it would be an issue after all. I was getting my college fund, right? Wrong. It started off with small comments, like we need to set aside a bit more money for Emma's wedding dress. Then it turned into, we might have to cut back on your college fund a little, just for the wedding. And then it hit me a subtle hint that I was going to have to foot the bill for my own future while Emma got everything handed to her on a silver platter. My college fund, the one I'd worked for, was suddenly a distant dream. I remember the first time they told me the money would be going to the wedding instead of my education. The guilt I felt was unbearable. "You know, it's a big day for Emma. We've always supported you. But we can't say no to her now," my mom said, her voice as if it was just another necessary step in our family's life. I tried to hold it together, but it felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. The weight of it all crushed me. They were choosing her over me. Again, my dreams, my hard work, nothing mattered as much as Emma's wedding. The moment I realized that, I wasn't going to get the support I needed. I felt like everything I'd been working toward was slipping away. My parents made it clear that my future wasn't as important as making sure Emma had the perfect wedding. I was left standing there, silent, watching as my dreams faded into the background. The more I thought about it, the more everything started to feel like a joke. My entire future, the one I had worked so hard for, the one I'd sacrificed countless hours for, was being overshadowed by Emma's wedding. And every time I brought it up, my parents acted like I was the one being unreasonable. "You're being selfish," my dad said one night when I tried to talk about how much I needed the money for school. "Emma only gets married once, son. This is a big deal for the whole family." I don't think I even spoke for a few moments after that. My mind raced, my heart pounded, and all I could do was stare at my father. He wasn't angry, not even frustrated, just calm, detached, like the decision had already been made. "This is what's best for the family," he added, as if that was supposed to make everything better, but it didn't. The more they justified it, the more I felt like I was being erased. My hard work, my sacrifice, none of it mattered. Not when Emma's wedding was on the horizon. That day, I walked out of the room. I needed space to breathe, to think. But when I stepped outside, I could hear Emma laughing in the kitchen with my mom, talking about the wedding, about the dress she had picked out, and it was like everything around me was spinning. I went for a walk to clear my head. The sun was setting, and the streets were quiet. But inside, I felt anything but. My stomach churned with anxiety and frustration. I had worked so hard to get here, and now it was all slipping through my fingers. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter, that my parents were just doing what they thought was right, that I could make it on my own. But the truth was, I felt betrayed. I could hear Emma in the background of my thoughts, laughing, talking about the wedding details. It wasn't her fault, but at that moment, I couldn't separate my anger from my disappointment in her. I felt like I was watching someone else's dream unfold, while mine was being left behind. How could they do this to me? How could they take my future and give it to her like it was some kind of gift? When I came back home, I could tell my parents had already made their decision. Emma was glowing with excitement, and everything revolved around her. I didn't matter anymore. And that's when I realized everything had always revolved around Emma. I was just the backup, the one who was supposed to get by on my own, without any help. A few days later, the wedding date was set, and my college fund, it was gone. I didn't speak to my parents for days after that. The weight of their decision, the one that had crushed everything I had worked for, sat like a stone in my chest. I couldn't even look at them without feeling that suffocating sense of betrayal. It wasn't just about the money yet, it was about everything that had led up to that moment. The years of sacrifices, the promises they made, the way they told me that education was everything. It all felt like a lie. They had made me believe that if I worked hard enough, they'd be there for me when it counted. But now, it seemed like none of it mattered. My sister Emma was still excited about her wedding plans, and to be honest, it made my skin crawl. It wasn't her fault. She didn't know the damage being done, but every time she smiled, every time she talked about the wedding, it felt like a slap to my face. I started to avoid her, retreating to my room, pretending I didn't hear her. Giddy conversations with Mom, she had no idea how much it hurt to watch her get everything handed to her. She was living the dream I'd worked for. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. One night, I exploded. It was after dinner, everyone was sitting around the table, chatting about the wedding details again. My mom was going on about how they needed to hire a professional photographer, and my dad was talking about how much the cake was going to cost. My frustration hit its boiling point. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Are you serious?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You've drained my college fund for this. For her wedding?" My parents froze. Emma looked up, startled. I could see the confusion in her eyes. She had no idea what was really going on. She had no idea how much I'd been hurting, how much I'd been giving up. Mom's face softened, but Dad's expression remained hard. "We told you. This is a big day for the family. We can't just let Emma get married without helping her make it special. It's always about her." I shouted, "Every time it's about Emma. Why is it that her wedding is more important than my future? What about my dreams? What about my future?" I could feel the tears building up, but I held them back. I wasn't going to let them see how much they'd broken me. "We've always given you what you need," my dad said, his voice firm. "But this is a once-in-a-lifetime event for Emma. You need to understand that." And there it was, again the dismissal. The same dismissive tone I'd heard my entire life. The same Emma comes first attitude. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the door without a word. I had never been this angry. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. I just had to get away, to breathe, to escape the suffocating weight of it all. I walked aimlessly through empty streets, trying to clear my head. But no matter how far I walked, the truth followed me like a shadow. I had been replaced. My family had chosen Emma over me, and there was no going back. The days following my outburst felt like a blur. I didn't go back home for a week. I couldn't bring myself to face them again, not after what I'd said, not after what they'd done. I told myself I needed time to cool off, to think things through. But the truth was, I was too hurt, too angry. I couldn't stand the thought of sitting across the dinner table from them, pretending everything was fine when they had just shattered my entire future. When I finally returned home, I was greeted with silence. The house felt cold, empty, like something had changed, and neither of us could fix it. Emma was at school, and my parents were sitting in the living room, quietly sipping their coffee. It was like no one knew how to move forward. I sat down, but the tension in the room was palpable. No one spoke for a long time. My mom glanced at me, then quickly looked away, unable to meet my eyes. My dad cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. "Look, son, we didn't mean to hurt you. We're just trying to do what's best for the family." I couldn't take it anymore. "What's best for the family?" I snapped. "You mean what's best for Emma?" Mom looked down, guilt creeping into her face. "That's not fair," she said quietly, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "You know we love you. Do you?" I shot back. "Do you really? Because it sure doesn't feel like it." I could feel my heart racing. My hands clenched into fists, but I fought the urge to lash out. I wasn't going to let them make me feel guilty for being upset. Dad tried to calm me down. "We're just trying to make things work," he said, his voice softer now, like he was trying to make peace. "We thought it would all be okay, but we're doing the best we can." I shook my head. "I don't need your charity. I don't need to be the one who's always expected to make sacrifices while she gets everything she wants. I've worked my ass off for this. I've earned it. And you're just throwing it all away for a wedding." It was the first time I had ever really said it aloud. The truth. That ugly, hurtful truth that had been building inside me for years. And when the words left my mouth, it felt like a weight lifted. But I also realized just how far I'd fallen. I knew, deep down, that something had broken that couldn't be fixed. I didn't want to feel this way about my parents. I didn't want to resent Emma, who was still my sister, despite everything. But I couldn't deny the truth anymore. They had chosen her, and in that moment, I realized I was done fighting for something that wasn't ever going to change. It was the last straw. I couldn't keep pretending that things were okay when they clearly weren't. I stood up, not saying another word, and walked out again. This time, I didn't know when or if I would come back. The days blurred into weeks, and I stayed away. I stayed with friends, crashing on their couches, trying to push the anger and hurt out of my mind. But no matter how far I ran, no matter how much I pretended, it always came back to one thing: Emma's wedding. The day of the wedding came, and I thought I was prepared. I thought I could avoid it, pretend it wasn't happening. But the truth is, I felt like I couldn't escape it. The whole family was buzzing with excitement, but I wasn't there. I wasn't invited, and I didn't plan on going. Still, I couldn't help myself. I woke up early that morning, and for the first time in weeks, I checked my phone. There were dozens of notifications, family members wishing Emma well. Pictures of her getting ready, her dress, the flowers, the venue, all of it. Every single post made it feel like I was disappearing, fading into the background. I wasn't a part of their perfect family anymore. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. I had been there all these years, supporting them, doing everything right. And yet Emma, who had always been the golden child, was getting everything I had worked for. The day was supposed to be mine, my moment to finally break free, to show them all what I was capable of. But instead, it was hers. Around noon, I found myself standing in front of my parents' house, watching through the window as guests arrived. I was so close, yet so far away. I saw my mom fixing Emma's veil, my dad talking to family members with that same proud smile he always wore when Emma was around. It was like I wasn't even a part of their world anymore. I tried to push the feeling down, telling myself that I didn't need them. I didn't need to be at the wedding. But the truth is, I did. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be important too. I wanted to know that all the sacrifices I had made, the late nights studying, the part-time jobs, the responsibility I took on for the family, it meant something. But today, it felt like none of that mattered. I spent the entire afternoon pacing, fighting with myself, trying to figure out what I should do. Should I go to the wedding and face the people who had treated me like an afterthought? Or should I just stay away and let them have their day? In the end, I decided to watch the wedding online. I knew I wasn't invited, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see it. I watched as my parents spoke about how proud they were of Emma, how wonderful she was, how lucky they were to have her, and I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like I was invisible. Every single word they spoke was a reminder of how much I'd been pushed aside. The worst part, I realized that they didn't even think twice about it. It wasn't guilt or remorse in their eyes. It was just another day, another moment for Emma to shine. I wasn't part of their world anymore. And as I sat there, tears silently falling down my face, I felt something in me break for good. The years that followed felt like a fog I couldn't quite clear. I spent them trying to rebuild my life, trying to move on from the family I had once been so close to. But the hurt, the anger, it never really went away. I threw myself into work, into new friendships, into anything that would take my mind off the gaping hole in my chest. But no matter what I did, something always lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me most. I avoided my parents' calls. When they left messages, I'd listen to them. The familiar tone of their voices, trying to sound casual, trying to act like everything was okay. "We miss you, son. We hope you're doing well," they'd say. It made my stomach churn. They missed me? They hadn't even noticed when I stopped coming around. They hadn't cared when they made the decision to take everything I worked for and give it to Emma. It felt like they were just trying to patch things up with words. When I knew it was deeper than that, for a while, I convinced myself that I was better off without them. I didn't need them to be happy. I didn't need their approval, their validation. I had built a new life, one where I wasn't the second choice, one where I wasn't living in Emma's shadow. But the truth was, I was still angry, and no amount of distance could change that. Every time I saw a post on social media about Emma's life, her perfect marriage, her beautiful house, the constant praise from my parents, it was like a fresh wound being opened. And no matter how hard I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, it did. I wasn't bitter about her success. I wasn't angry because she was happy. I was angry because I was never given the chance to chase my own happiness. I was the one who sacrificed everything. And for what? For her to live the life I had dreamed of? For her to take the place I should have had in my parents' eyes? I spent more nights than I care to admit, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Maybe I should have been more vocal, more demanding of what I needed. Maybe I should have confronted them sooner. Maybe I should have walked away the moment they decided my dreams didn't matter. But it was too late for regrets now. The damage had already been done. Months went by, then years, and somehow, as time passed, the bitterness started to fade. But the ache, the emptiness never truly left. I tried to convince myself that I was moving forward, that I was better off. But every now and then, I'd find myself thinking about what could have been, and I'd realize I was still stuck in the same place emotionally. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about Emma. It was about the fact that my family had made me feel small, insignificant. They had chosen her time and time again, and left me to pick up the pieces of a broken future. It came out of nowhere. I was sitting in my small apartment, staring at my laptop, trying to focus on a project that didn't really matter. My life had become a routine. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Nothing truly felt important anymore. But I didn't know how to break the cycle. I had tried to move on, tried to convince myself that I was better off without my family. But when the phone rang that day, all of the old emotions came rushing back. I didn't recognize the number at first, but then I saw the area code. It was home. My heart skipped a beat, and a pit formed in my stomach. My mind raced. I hadn't heard from them in months, and I certainly hadn't been the one to reach out. But there it was, the phone in my hand, and I didn't know whether to answer it or throw it out the window. I let it ring for a few more seconds before reluctantly swiping the screen. Hello, it was my mom. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. Son, it's your dad. He's in trouble. Her words came out in a rush, as if she was afraid I'd hang up if she didn't speak fast enough. I froze. My dad. Trouble. He had always been the strong one, the steady presence in our family. He was the one who never showed weakness, who always had a solution to every problem. What's happened? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, a breath, and then she spoke again. He's in serious debt, and we've tried everything. But now we don't know where else to turn. Her words hung in the air like a weight, heavy and suffocating. We need you, son. We need your help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The parents who had once told me to figure things out on my own, the ones who had made it clear that my future didn't matter as much as Emma's wedding, were now begging for my help. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the anger in my own words. You want me to help you? After everything you did? After you took everything I had worked for and handed it to Emma? My chest tightened, and the words came faster now. Where was this help when I needed it? Where were you when I was trying to build my future? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her choking on the words. She didn't know what to say. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, son. We've messed up. Please, we don't know what else to do. I didn't know how to respond. The anger was still there, still raw and cutting. But somewhere deep down, there was a small flicker of something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was sympathy. I didn't know, but in that moment I realized something. I didn't owe them anything anymore. But somehow, I couldn't ignore the fact that they were my parents. Despite everything, they were still family. They had always been family. And so, against everything I felt, I agreed to meet them. I couldn't believe I was actually doing this. After everything, after the years of resentment, the anger that had festered deep inside me, I was agreeing to meet my parents. But there I was, sitting in my car outside a small cafe, trying to convince myself that this was the right thing to do. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. We're here. Please, son. It's really bad. I felt a tightness in my chest at the words. It's really bad was an understatement. I knew what this meeting was really about. They weren't just asking for money, they were asking for me to save them from the mess they'd created. The same mess they had ignored when they decided my future didn't matter. I took a deep breath and walked into the cafe. The familiar smell of coffee and pastries hit me, but it didn't feel comforting. It felt like everything was out of place, like I was stepping back into a life that no longer made sense. I saw them sitting at a table in the corner. My mom was looking down, wringing her hands in that nervous way she always did when she was upset. My dad, on the other hand, was trying to look confident, but his shoulders were slumped. He looked older than I remembered. The weight of whatever financial disaster they were facing had aged him when they saw me. My mom's face lit up with a mixture of relief and guilt. My dad gave me a curt nod, but there was no smile, no warmth. It was like everything that had happened before was still hanging in the air between us. I sat down slowly, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them how much they had hurt me, how much they had ruined my life. But instead, I kept my mouth shut and waited for them to speak. Mom was the first to break the silence. We didn't know what to do. Your father, he didn't tell you, but we've been struggling for a while now. The business went under, and we've racked up a ton of debt. We thought we could handle it on our own, but now it's out of control. She choked back a sob. We're not asking for everything, just some help. We've lost everything. We don't know where else to turn. I could hear the desperation in her voice, and part of me felt something stir a brief flicker of sympathy. But it was quickly drowned out by the anger that had been simmering inside me for so long. I had worked so hard to get to where I was, and now they were asking me for help. asking me to bail them out of the mess they had made while I had been left behind. I turned to my dad, who was sitting across from me, avoiding my gaze. I could see the guilt written on his face now, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough to undo the years of emotional neglect. "You expect me to just step in and fix this?" I asked, my voice cold. "After everything you did, after the way you treated me, after taking my future away from me for her wedding." Dad's face hardened, but I could see the regret in his eyes. "We didn't mean for it to be like this, son. We thought we were doing the right thing." "Doing the right thing?" My voice rose, cutting through the tension in the air. "You've always chosen Emma, always, and now you want me to help you when you've never given a damn about me. You didn't care about my dreams, my future. Why should I care about yours?" I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I held it together. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me again. I wasn't that kid anymore, desperate for their approval. After a long silence, I let out a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. You've burned bridges with me, and I don't know if I can rebuild them." I paused, looking between the two of them. "But I'll help, but it won't be for free. I'm not doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. And if I'm going to help you, there are going to be rules, boundaries. You don't get to keep treating me like I'm invisible." My mom nodded quickly, tears welling up in her eyes. My dad didn't speak for a moment, but I could see a shift in him. Maybe he realized that this wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't about what he wanted. It was about me, and for once, I was the one setting the terms. "I'll help you fix this," I said quietly. "But you have to understand I'm not doing this for the same reasons you think. I'm doing this because I have to, not because I owe you anything." The weeks that followed were a blur. I helped them more than I ever thought I would. I gave them financial advice, helped them restructure their debts, and even showed them how to create a budget. It wasn't easy. Every time I had to sit down with them, a part of me wanted to scream, to remind them of how they had destroyed everything I had worked for. But I couldn't let that anger consume me. They were my parents, and somehow I was still trying to hold on to the last piece of family I had left. But even as I worked with them, something in me still felt unsettled. The resentment was there, simmering beneath the surface, and it wouldn't go away. I tried to ignore it, tried to push it down. But there was always that nagging feeling that I wasn't doing this for the right reasons, that I was letting them off the hook too easily. And then came the moment I knew was inevitable. I had to confront Emmett. She had been completely oblivious to what had been happening behind the scenes. To her, life had gone on like normal. She was still living in her perfect little bubble, never once questioning how much she had taken for granted. I hadn't seen her since the wedding, and I had no idea how much more of this I could take. It was a Saturday afternoon when I called her. I had been putting it off, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. She picked up on the second ring, her voice light and cheerful. "Hey, how's everything going?" I hated the way she sounded so carefree, like nothing had changed, like everything was still the same. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice flat. "About the wedding, about everything." There was a pause on the other end. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone turning a little more cautious. I took a deep breath. "I need to know if you even realize what's been happening, what Mom and Dad have been doing, what they've done to me." I could hear the confusion in her voice. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know," I interrupted, my voice rising. "Don't try to act like you don't know. You've always had everything handed to you. You've always been their golden child, the one who could do no wrong while I was left in the shadows, and now they're in debt because of their own stupid decisions. And I'm the one who has to clean up the mess. Do you even realize how much you've taken from me?" There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't respond at first. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "I didn't know, okay? I didn't know any of this was going on, but it wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't ask for any of this." It was the first time she had ever sounded vulnerable, and something inside me softened, but the bitterness didn't go away. "I know you didn't ask for it, but that doesn't change the fact that you got everything. The wedding, the attention, the love from Mom and Dad. And I was just expected to take a back seat to all of it. I've been sacrificing for years, Emma, and where was my reward?" I could hear her on the other end, trying to piece together what I was saying. She still didn't fully understand. I could tell, but I wasn't going to give up. "I'm not asking for your apology, Emma. I don't need that from you. I just want you to realize that everything isn't as perfect as you think it is. There's a lot of stuff you don't know about, stuff that's been happening for a long time, and it's time I stopped letting it slide." There was another long pause, and for a second, I thought maybe she wasn't going to say anything at all. But then, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't know. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know if they were enough to heal the wounds between us, but it was a start. It was the first time she had ever acknowledged my pain, and maybe that was all I needed. "I know you didn't know," I said softly, "but things are different now, and I'm not the same person I was before. I don't need you to fix anything. I just needed you to hear me." She was quiet for a moment, then finally said, "I hear you, and I'm sorry." The conversation ended, and I sat there, feeling a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, but also something else, a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to rebuild the broken pieces of my family. Maybe this was the first step. But as I sat there, staring at the phone, I knew the real work was just beginning. After the conversation with Emma, I felt like something had shifted just slightly, but enough to make me reconsider my next steps. I still didn't trust her, and I definitely didn't trust my parents. But something about the way Emma apologized, no matter how hesitant, made me think that maybe there was more to her than I had been willing to see. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but I wasn't willing to let everything fall apart either. The situation with my parents was still dire. Their debts were massive, and their attempts to fix things on their own had failed. Despite my anger, despite the years of neglect, I knew they were desperate. And as much as I resented them for putting me in this position, I couldn't just walk away. I had to do something. I wasn't doing this because I loved them. I wasn't doing this to make everything right again. I was doing this because it was the right thing to do. And because I wanted to prove to myself that I could be better than the bitterness that had consumed me for so long, I spent the next few weeks diving into their financials, figuring out where all the money had gone, what had caused them to fall so deep into debt. Every conversation with my mom felt like a battle. She was ashamed, embarrassed, and at times defensive, but I refused to let her off the hook. I needed to know the truth. I wasn't going to help them rebuild their lives if they weren't being honest with me. "You need to tell me everything," I said to her one afternoon as we sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of bills and bank statements. "I'm not doing this unless you're honest with me. You have to take responsibility for what's happened." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I know we should have told you earlier. We thought we could fix it on our own. We didn't want to burden you. You should have told me," I said, my voice cold but not unkind. "This is a mess, and you knew it was. You can't keep pretending like everything's fine." She wiped her eyes, then nodded again. "You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't want to admit how bad things were." It wasn't easy to hear, but it was a start. I could feel the anger melting away, replaced by a grim sense of determination. I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing this because I needed to prove to myself that I could walk away from the past, that I could move forward, no matter how painful it might be. Over the next few weeks, I worked with them to create a new budget. I helped them sell off some of their possessions, things that could bring in a little money. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. I showed them how to cut back on unnecessary expenses, how to make the smallest adjustments that would help them get back on their feet. But it wasn't just about the money. The real work was in changing the way they thought about family, the way they had treated me for years. I could see it in their eyes, the realization that they had neglected me, that they had taken me for granted. It wasn't enough to fix their finances. I needed them to understand why I had walked away in the first place. "You've never treated me like I mattered," I said to my dad one evening as we sat together, sorting through a stack of bills. "You've always put Emma first, always, and that hurt. It hurt more than anything else. I didn't just lose my college fund. I lost my place in this family." He was quiet for a long time, then finally looked up, his voice hoarse. "I don't know how to fix that, son. I've been a bad father. I don't know how to make up for what I've done." I could see the sincerity in his eyes. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a step forward, and that was more than I had ever expected. It was around this time that I realized something important. I wasn't helping them because I wanted their approval. I wasn't doing this to fix everything. I was doing this because, in some strange way, I needed closure. I needed to show them that even after everything they had taken from me, I still had the power to move forward. I was still in control of my own life. The work wasn't done. The debts didn't magically disappear overnight, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose. And, more importantly, I felt like I was finally in control of my own story. I had always imagined that helping my parents through their crisis would feel like some kind of victory. That when I finally did it, I'd feel like a hero-like. I had redeemed myself in their eyes. But as the days turned into weeks, and the debt slowly started to shrink, I realized that the true victory wasn't in saving them. It was in saving myself. I hadn't realized it at first, but when I walked into that cafe to meet them, when I agreed to help them rebuild their lives, I wasn't just agreeing to fix their mess. I was agreeing to take back control of my own. I was done being the second choice, done being the one who always sacrificed, done letting my dreams fade into the background for their convenience. That's what the past few months had taught me. I was the one who had the power to make the decisions now. I was the one who could decide what my future looked like, regardless of what anyone else expected from me. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need them to validate me. I had my own life to build, my own dreams to chase, and this was my moment to finally live for myself. I hadn't spoken to Emma much after our conversation. It wasn't that I didn't want to. There was just so much distance between us now. The apology she gave me, the acknowledgement of my pain, it had felt like a small step forward, but it wasn't enough. The truth was, I couldn't rely on her or anyone else to make things right. I couldn't keep waiting for the love and support I had always craved from them. I realized that I had to let go. Let go of the anger. Let go of the resentment. Let go of the idea that I needed to fix everything for them to see me, for them to value me. My happiness, my worth, was not tied to their approval anymore. One day, I called my parents and told them I was moving out of the city. I needed to take this next step on my own, to carve out a space for myself that didn't have their shadow looming over me. "We understand," my dad said quietly when I told him. I could hear the regret in his voice. But there was something else to adjust, to make the best of things for everyone else. But now, I was standing tall, owning my life for the first time. And as I packed my things, I realized that this was the closure I had been waiting for. Not in their apologies or in the way they tried to make up for everything, but in the way I was taking charge of my own story. As I drove away, leaving the town I had grown up in, I felt a mix of emotions. It wasn't easy, but it was freeing. I wasn't running away from my family. I was running toward my own life, toward the person I had finally realized I could become. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was enough. I was enough, just as I was. I didn't need to be the one who sacrificed everything for them. I didn't need their validation anymore. I was finally free.